As we start today, we're talking about reaching your potential, overcoming the adversities in your life. And we would begin by simply saying, what do we mean when we use the word leadership? What do we mean when we use the words leadership? If I had to boil down leadership in a single word, I would tell you that to me, leadership is influence. Leadership is influence. The most powerful leaders I know are men and women who have tremendous influence. God builds in us the unique traits of leadership, and we take the time to understand just how crucial it is. I'm speaking to some of you. Your family needs leadership. Your marriage needs leadership, or perhaps your children need leadership. There isn't any business in this competitive world I know that can survive and flourish without leadership. How are your leadership skills? Coach Dungy, the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, a wonderful paradigm of excellence, says you want to have leadership position, then there are things you have to do to develop that. Regarding his team, he said, it's very important for me to make them good leaders. I tell my team that a lot of being a great leader is knowing where you're going and who you're following. Knowing where you're going and who you're following. I think that's very important, Dungy adds. The best leaders are following Christ. That's the best leader you can follow. And so the television cameras never catch Coach Dungy shouting at an official or cursing under his breath. Coach Dungy's priorities are family and faith. And Coach Dungy enters the Super Bowl having overcome many adversities. Many of us remember it was just 13 months ago when his son Jamie, age 18, committed suicide. How did Coach Dungy respond? He committed the situation to God in prayer, and he continues to lead his family. Dungy donated his son's eyes to the Lions Institute for Transplant and Research in Tampa, where Jamie's two eyes are now giving sight to two different people. And we celebrate today Coach Dungy and Chicago Bears coach Lovie Smith, a protege and a good friend. And we celebrate both of them as the first black head coaches to make it to the Super Bowl. And I think we ought to put our hands together and celebrate that today as well. Great achievement from two great men. Coach Dungy counts his players' loaves. He said his style is to simply count how many loaves they have. And what is a loaf? Well, it's not running out of play. It's not giving 100% effort. It's not tackling properly. But Lovie Smith has a whole different strategy with his players. What he does when they do wrong is he just stares at them. And that is an interesting form of communication because it means you messed up big time. They get the message. In fact, they say they'd rather hear Lovie Smith scream or holler than just stare at them. Now, leadership is so important. If you get a great leader in a marriage, I'm telling you that marriage will take off. You get a great leader in a business, that business will take off. You get a great leader, and I guarantee you he'll draft great leaders around him. And the reason many things, institutions, marriages, etc., are going south is because of poor leadership. I read the other day that the average pastor now, his tenure in a church is under 5 years. Most pastors today are not willing to stick it out. And many of the pastors, in responding to survey after survey, are saying, I'm woefully lacking in leadership. J. Oswald Sanders, in his classic Spiritual Leadership, says, a leader is a person who has the ability to get others to do what they don't want to do, and like it. A leader is a person who has the ability to get others to do what they don't want to do and like it. Can you get people around you to do what they don't want to do and like it? Cyril Barber, who has a beautiful treatise on Nehemiah, said experts know what should be done. Leaders know what should be done and how to get people to do it. And the distinction between experts and leaders is leaders will get men and women to do it. And so Barna the pollster said leadership is the ability to put the plans into practice, to accomplish specific objectives through skillful management of time and people and tangible resources. He said a good leader is one who is able to motivate people and one who is capable of making good decisions even under pressure or in conditions of uncertainty one who can guide people through actions as well as words. Now, if you're like me, you've got a library at home, has all kinds of leadership books in it. And this series is not about me quoting business leadership books. I think we can borrow from some examples. But did you know that there is one book in the Bible that is nothing more than an entire manifesto on leadership? It profiles one of the greatest leaders of all time, Nehemiah. And I guarantee you what we are going to pull out of this book on leadership is going to stun you. I'm going to prove that to you today by just giving you a little synopsis. We'll extract from this book why Nehemiah was so profoundly effective. And it boils down to one thing: he was a great leader. And it challenges you and it challenges me that if we become a great leader, incredible things will happen because of our lives. So we would, just as a bumper, end with Mr. Drucker, who has talked and counseled with so many about leadership. And prior to going way beyond Drucker in the depths of Scripture, we would notate that Drucker says great leaders are marked by 5 things. First, he says a great leader is a person who works. You will never find a great leader who is not committed to a strong work ethic. Secondly, Drucker says a leader sees his assignment as a responsibility rather than a rank or privilege. Thirdly, Drucker says a leader wants strong, capable, self-assured, and independent associates around him. You know, I've noticed the stronger the leader is, the more confidence he has, and he has strong people around him. Fourthly, a leader creates human energies and vision. You will never get around a leader but what he'll be talking about the vision. And then fifthly, a leader develops followers' trust by his consistency. Now, as we come here, then we would simply say there are 3 types of people in the world. There are 3 types of people in the church. There are those who make things happen. There are those who watch things happen. And there are those who are left wondering what happened. Which are you this morning? Are you the kind of person that makes things happen? God's hand's on you. His leadership's on you. When we look at Nehemiah, we understand that we are now in the 16th book of the Bible. 13 chapters. 406 verses, and in those 13 chapters, there are no less than 24 questions. And the author is Nehemiah. Pick it up with me, chapter 1, verse 1, page 786. Let's go. The words of Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah. It came to pass in the month of Chislev. Chislev is the 9th month on the Jewish calendar. It correlates from mid-November to mid-December. The Spirit of God wants you to know when this came to Nehemiah, in the 20th year. Now, this would be the 20th year of the reign of King Artaxerxes, that great king of Persia. And we know from history that he reigned from 465 to 425 BC. The events of Nehemiah then began at 445 BC, just about 450 years before Jesus entered planet Earth. We go on, 1 verse 2, that Hananiah. This was Nehemiah's brother. One of my brethren came with men from Judah, and I asked them concerning the Jews who had escaped, who had survived the captivity, Babylonian captivity, and concerning Jerusalem. Now we might go back and say that at the end of verse 1 it says, and I was in Shushan, the citadel. I want to tell you, we see Nehemiah in a very interesting place. Admire the humility. Did he say, I'm on concierge level and things are really cool now? Did he tell you that he happened to be the personal attaché of the most powerful man on planet Earth? Artaxerxes Longimanus, the king of Persia? He just told you he was a cupbearer. Recent significant ruins of the royal residence at Susa that we've read about this morning have been uncovered and unearthed by French archaeologists, and it began in 1880 to 1890. You might be interested to know that their archaeology discovery has recreated for us the absolute splendor of Nehemiah's surroundings. The palace was shown to have been built with cedar and gold and silver and ivory imported from various countries of the world. And then artistically colored glazed bricks and beautiful designs of winged bowls literally decorated the entire palace. George Rawlinson, one of the professors of ancient history, describes this Persian court that Nehemiah worked in as absolute splendor and magnificence. Now, what do we see? This is the guy that literally tasted the wine for the king of Persia and gave him only the best. And with any great leader, president, he screened every piece of food that went into his mouth. He had access to the most powerful man on the planet. Just a few facts. The first 4 words, let me help repudiate these liberal theologians that try to always corrode and erode the authority of Scripture. What do the first 4 words of 1 verse 1 say? Say it out loud with me. The words of Nehemiah. I can't hear you. The words of Nehemiah. Say it again, just a little louder. The words of Nehemiah. Now this is the title of the book. What does that introduction tell you? That Nehemiah wrote this book regardless of what the liberal scholars try to say. And many of the Old Testament prophets began their writings in the exact same way. A few basic facts about Nehemiah. You might be interested. In the Hebrew Bible, Ezra and Nehemiah was one book. In fact, it was known as the book of Ezra, and then later a division came. Ezra was known as the first book of Ezra. Nehemiah was known as the second book of Ezra. About the 4th century AD, Jerome, one of the early church fathers, divided the writings of Nehemiah from Ezra, and he appropriately in the Vulgate entitled them the Book of Nehemiah. And so both books begin at Persia and they end at Jerusalem. And Artaxerxes Longimanus, the Persian king, interestingly allowed the Jews, including his most trusted associate Nehemiah, to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the wall around Jerusalem. I placed a wall behind me today because no ancient city was considered an ancient city without a protective wall. This is foreign to us, but in that era it was very important. Marauders and all kinds of bandits would come and pillage and plunder a city and take away the treasures. But with a protective wall, any city was safe. And here was the people of God who couldn't get the wall up. Now this is a fascinating history. If you look at Persia in antiquity, you find that these were some of the most brilliant, intellectual, most sophisticated people of all antiquity. We know that Cyrus, the king of Persia, reigned from 538 to 529 BC. And we know he conquered Babylon, decimating Nebuchadnezzar in 536 BC. If you recall, God had allowed the people of his people, the Jews, to leave Babylon, to go back to Jerusalem. But after 70 years of captivity in Babylon, they were too comfortable. Their business enterprises were doing too well. Why should they leave? And what a fatal mistake that was. Many of them died when King Cyrus decimated Babylon and brought down the Babylonian Empire. And then after him, very interestingly, Cambyses reigned from 529 to 522 BC, and perhaps that's the Artaxerxes mentioned in Ezra 4:7 and verse 11 and 23. And it was that Cambyses that stopped the work of the temple. Thank God he didn't stay on the throne very long until Darius Hystaspes became the king of Persia from 521 to 485 BC, and he authorized the completion of the temple, as we read about in Ezra chapter 6. Get this, with secular history corroborating the biblical narrative just perfectly. Ahasuerus, reigned in Persia from 485 to 465 BC, and he made a beautiful Jewish girl his wife. You know her name, a movie was just done on it. Say her name with me, Esther. And Artaxerxes Longimanus, the king of Nehemiah's day, the son of Xerxes, and so the stepson of Queen Esther, was the man that allowed Nehemiah to return. No doubt Ezra, or Esther, who had become queen of Persia about 60 years after the Jews returned to Jerusalem, she was still alive at this time, and we truly believe that she probably said, "Let him go," a heart for her people. You would then perhaps remember that it was Alexander the Great, that young man out of control, that defeated the Persian world empire in 331 BC. And so Nehemiah, the trusted cupbearer, was allowed by King Artaxerxes to leave Susan, Persia, and to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the wall. Now, I want to see how good your arithmetic is biblically. Nebuchadnezzar defeated Jerusalem, finally decimated everything in 586 BC. He burnt the temple to the ground. He burnt the walls to the ground. Nehemiah, we said, started his work of rebuilding the wall in 445 BC. How many years had these walls been rubble? Over 100, right? Do the arithmetic right. It's maybe what, 141? What I find fascinating is that Nehemiah goes back from Persia. He starts rebuilding the wall, and he must have amazing leadership skills because he got the wall of Jerusalem rebuilt in 52 days. Now, men and women, you see speed in a leader that literally is stunning. And this is why this book called the Bible is better than any secular business book. I want to tell you, if you'll stay with me in February and March, you're going to gain leadership insight unlike anything at Harvard Business School. And because the Word of God is quick and powerful, inspired by God, you're going to pull away from this book enough information to literally transform your life and to help you be superior to the competitors around you. So the key dates are 537 BC, the first Jews returned to Jerusalem. 516, the temple restored. Remember, Zechariah and Haggai had a part with Zerubbabel there. In 479 BC, Esther becomes queen of Persia. In 458 BC, Ezra leads the second expedition back to Jerusalem. And then in 444 BC, Nehemiah brings the third wave back. You know what's interesting to me? Nebuchadnezzar had 3 waves decimating the city. And there are 3 waves of Jews coming back to the city. Just a little interesting chronology. And so we go to 1 verse 3, here we go. And they said to me, chapter 1 verse 3, Nehemiah, the survivors, Nehemiah, who are left from the captivity, Babylon, in the province, are in, what's the word? Great distress and reproach. The wall of Jerusalem is also broken down, and its gates are burned with fire. Now, men and women, this was a very distressful situation. But why should Nehemiah care? I mean, there he was. I'm telling you, as I said, he was in the Oval Office of his day. Sure, he was a Jew, but why should he care? He had it set. It was all made for him. But there was something in the heart of this leader to leave his comforts and go back and do what no leader could do for over 100 years. In 536 BC, Zerubbabel leads the first group. Ezra says there are 42,360 Jews in that group, 7,337 servants, 200 singers. In 458 BC, Ezra precedes Nehemiah and brings the second group. The number, 1,754 males, 100 talents of gold. And then in 479, Esther, a Jew, a beautiful Jewish girl, becomes miraculously the queen of Persia. Look at the sovereignty of God in this puzzle. And in 473 BC, Esther puts her life on the line to save the Jews from massacre. And so Esther appears about 40 years after the temple was rebuilt and 30 years before the wall was rebuilt. And then in 445 BC, Nehemiah comes back, and we are going to see not just walls rebuilt. That's done by chapter 6, but there's 13 chapters in the book. From chapter 7 to 13, we see a vintage leader putting the people of God together in such harmony that spiritual revival explodes. Now, this is incredible to me. And I think, how in the world? You know, I know what you may be saying. You say, Jerry, the timetable is not important. Why do you bore us with these specifics? But listen to me. The timetable is important. The timing to a leader is always important. I have never met a leader yet who was not in a hurry. I have never met a leader yet who doesn't want to get things done for God. You know, it's so easy for us to sit back and say, well, things are great. But guess what? If we look outside, we see there are thousands and millions of people waiting for us. I've been praying for China, and I've been reading very closely all the developments in China. And if you would have ever told me that God would allow a door open for our church in Kansas City to be on television in China, I would have said impossible. But guess what? God is opening the impossible doors before our eyes. Now, as we come to Nehemiah, then, we see he exudes with leadership. I see 11 traits. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to teach you 11 traits that will show you 99 facts of leadership. By the time we finish this series, you will have learned 99 facts about leadership under 11 traits. You don't want to miss one of these 99. Let's go. Only a cursory check. We're going to just take our toe and touch it in the water. But in future days, we will embellish every principle. First, we see that as a great leader, one of the magnificent traits of this man is we see this leader pray in a way that no leader has ever prayed in the entire Bible. I'm not talking about Boris still prayer. If you look closely at this book, you're going to find in chapter 1, 5 through 11, and chapter 2, verse 4, and chapter 4, 4 and 5, chapter 9, 5 through 38, chapter 13, 28 through 31, you are going to see prayers and read prayers that are so stupendous. Nehemiah gets done in prayer what most people can never get done. This is a prayer manual to me. Chapter 1, verse 4, and so it was when I heard these words. What's the first thing this great leader does? I called a planning meeting. I sat down and wept and mourned for many days. I was, say it please, fasting and praying before the God of heaven. Nehemiah is going to teach you how to pray. Number 2. As a great leader, Nehemiah exudes with loyalty. As Dungy says, you can't be a great leader until you know who you're following. You know why some people flunk out in the church? They want to do it their way, and they won't take it any other way. Here's what's so phenomenal about this man. He hears the need back in Jerusalem. His heart is pulled back to Jerusalem. The walls are rubbish, but he has a responsibility to the king of Persia. He can race into the king of Persia and say, you know, God's calling me to go. I got to go. I don't care what you can say. This is a God thing. Notice what he does. Chapter 2, verse 5. And I said to the king, read these next few words out loud with me. If it pleases the king. Again, if it pleases the king. One more time. If it pleases the king. If it pleases the king and if your servant has found favor in your sight, I ask that you send me to Judah, to the city of my father's tombs, that I may rebuild it. Boy, this is exquisite, isn't it? This shows the grace of a calculated leader. He knows how to make the approach. Men and women, may I say to you, great leaders persuade men. They persuade men and women because they know everything about the approach. As we embellish chapter 2, we learn that immediately opposition is raised up against him. The two central characters of this great leader opposing him are Sanballat, Tobiah. Chapter 2, verse 10. When Sanballat, the Horonite, Tobiah, the Ammonite, heard of it, they were deeply distressed that a man had come to seek the well-being of the children of Israel. May I say to you, you will always know leaders by their opposition. Jesus said in John 7:7, woe unto you when all men speak well of you, for so said their fathers to the what kind of prophets? False prophets. What did you say, Jesus? Woe unto you when all men speak well of you, for so said their fathers to the false prophets. In our decadent culture, it is not a good compliment if everybody is saying everything good about you. We're dying morally as a nation. MTV owns Nickelodeon. That's scary. If you read the Wall Street Journal last week, Nickelodeon is now innovating into multiple internet expressions. Why? They know, where are the children? They are on the net. Nehemiah is going to show us how to handle opposition brilliantly. Thirdly, quickly, Nehemiah reveals the secrets of leadership. Now, this is fascinating. I turn from chapter 2 to chapter 3. I only have the time to give you the highlights. Take a look at this. Chapter 3, verse 2, and next to them. By the way, the header on my Nelson Study Bible that we give to everyone who becomes a member of First Family is Rebuilding the Wall. The study notes in this book are fantastic from Nelson. Chapter 3, verse 3, I highlighted it again, and next to them. Chapter 3, verse 7, and next to them. Chapter 3, verse 8, and next to them. Chapter 3, verse 9, and next to them. Chapter 3:10, next to them. Chapter 3, verse 12, and next to them. Chapter 3:28, his own house. 3:29, his own house. Chapter 3, verse 30, his dwelling. You say, Jerry, I don't get it. Well, folks, you know, one man by himself doesn't build this kind of wall in 52 days. What do we see in Nehemiah that is absolutely stunning? This man knew how to mobilize people around him. You go home this afternoon, check this out. Try to list how many names are mentioned in the book of Nehemiah, 13 chapters. It is going to literally stagger you to count them all up. He not only knew how to mobilize people, boy, he stationed them in such a strategic way, and they were all working simultaneously. And guess what? Even when the attack was so great that they had to put their tools down, he taught them how to put a tool in one hand and a weapon in the other and keep on working. Chapter 3 is going to show you the secrets of leadership. Trait number 4. Nehemiah then does what has been my observation with great leaders across the world. He has learned the power of perseverance. This man is not a quitter. There is nothing about him about quitting. He doesn't continue to build the wall because it's easy. It's everything but easy. Every day was literally a challenge like a tribulation. And in chapter 4, there is religious delusion on top of opposition. This is most confusing. But it so happened that when Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, that he was furious. And he was very indignant. He mocked the Jews. He spoke to the brethren in the army of Samaria and said, "What are these feeble Jews doing? Will they fortify themselves? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they complete it in a day? Will they revive the stones from the heap of rubbish, stones that are burned?" Now, if you want to know how he responded to opposition, and I want to be very careful how I say this, in this chapter, he prays an imprecatory prayer. I've read of imprecatory psalms. What are imprecatory psalms? Imprecatory psalms are when David, in the Spirit, is saying, God, crush your enemies. He's using a vernacular that's scary. Imprecatory psalms are not there by accident. Imprecatory psalms teach us the hatred of God towards sin, the high standard of God in righteousness. They're there to teach us about righteousness. But I want to tell you, this isn't an imprecatory psalm. It's an imprecatory prayer. The people that are hindering Nehemiah the most, he tells God about them. And guess how he does it? Chapter 4, verse 4. Hear, O our God, for we are, say it please, despised. Turn their reproach on their own heads and give them as plunder to a land of captivity. Do not cover their iniquity. And do not let their sin be blotted out before you. I've never read a spiritual leader pray a prayer like that, have you? He's saying, God, don't forgive their sin. For they have provoked you to anger before the builders. And this is a chapter, and these are verses that we need to look at in much detail. We will in the days ahead. imprecatory prayer. I've heard stories through the years in my Christian experience of a wife who said, Jerry, I got so burdened for my husband, I just started praying, God, you shut that man down until he listens to you. And I've had godly Christian wives tell me in some instances they saw God do the miraculous in getting a husband's attention who was away from God. I've had Christian parents without any degree of flippancy who've said to me and told me stories, Jerry, we got to the point that through intercession, we literally prayed a hedge around a wayward son or daughter, and we said, God, shut their world down until they obey you. Obviously, only the Spirit can lead to pray in such an extreme way. But I think we would all acknowledge that there are instances where God leads men and women to pray in strategic, Spirit-impacting ways. That's amazing. Nehemiah did not listen to these threats, and he ignored that these walls had been burned down for 100 years. He ignored the opposition, and he got the walls built. By the way, a great athlete gave credit for his success to a coach who had shown him the basic lesson of competition. His track coach had said to him that he must run until it hurt. And anyone who's ever competed in track events knows that's true. Anyone who's ever thought about life knows that's true. I remember when I started working out with Farhad, it was really cool the first day, and then I kept doing it, and he kept working me out so hard that I finally woke up the next day and thought I'd been in a car wreck. Ever worked your muscles like that? And of course, what I did was pick up the telephone and call Farhad and say, I can't come tomorrow. I just don't feel good. And of course, he said, Pastor, get over here. I learned something, that when your muscles are sore and you keep on exercising them, guess what goes away? The pain. And there are many people God's called you to leadership, and you started exerting your leadership, and pain came your way, and because pain came your way, you said, Jerry, it's so uncomfortable. I know it. Work through the pain. God's comfort's coming. Take the stand with your daughter and don't back up, Mom. It's going to be painful because she's going to isolate you. Dad, take the pain with your son. Just be God's leader. Don't back up. Fifthly, Nehemiah, we see, is beautiful as a leader, as a future forecaster. We don't have the time to get in it now, but in chapter 5, there is all kinds of challenges, and Nehemiah decides to humble himself in the midst of these challenges. Now, this is the guy, again, that was on concierge with the king of Persia, and it really wasn't fun abasing himself as he does in chapter 5. But as a great leader, he tells us what every great leader does. They always see in the future. Chapter 5, verse 19, he coins it with the first two words. Remember me. Will you say that with me? Remember me. You see, when things are going bad, when you're doing what you're supposed to and it doesn't seem like anything's turning out right, why don't you pray the prayer that Nehemiah prayed? God, remember me. God may not alleviate the stress and the hassles and the problems in your life. There may not be 10 seconds of real tranquility or 10 minutes or 10 hours today or tomorrow, but I promise you, if you learn to see in the future as Nehemiah did, you'll learn how to pray as a future forecaster. God, remember me. Shortly after starting her perfume business, Estee Lauder realized that she had to persuade a cosmetic buyer to put her products in stores throughout the country. Estee Lauder had a little tiny thing going on, but she had such a huge vision of what it could become. And so at 9 a.m., Estee Lauder was in the offices of the American Merchandising Corporation. And if only she could talk Marie Weston into it, the cosmetic buyer. Lauder had no appointment. She was advised to come back another day. And so she said, I don't mind waiting. I'll wait until she has some time. Noon came and Marie Weston didn't come out. At lunchtime, the receptionist said that Marie Weston's schedule was full. Miss Lauder, come back another day. And she turned very politely and said to the receptionist, I'll wait a little longer. Hours passed. 5:15 p.m., Marie Weston came out of her office. She looked at Estee Lauder in disbelief, and then later she said the disbelief turned into admiration. The lady had waited 8 hours and 15 minutes to see her, and so she said, well, come in. Such patience must be rewarded. Marie Weston was impressed with Estee Lauder's cosmetics, but there was no room. She said, come back later. And of course, Estee Lauder did come back later, did sell Marie Weston on putting Estee Lauder cosmetics in just a few stores. And the few stores turned into a bonanza. And you know the rest of the story of Estee Lauder. Don't tell me about where you are now. Tell me about where God can take you. Don't tell me about the fight you had with your wife last week. Let me tell you about the great marriage that's down the road for you. Don't tell me about all the challenges financially. Let me tell you about a God who said he will provide just as he provided food for the prophet. Get your eyes off where you are now and let your eyes see where you can be through God's blessing and anointing and blessing in your life. Sixthly, Nehemiah shows us how he can discern distractions as a leader. Every great leader I know they have literally a high sense of discernment for distractions. In 6 verse 10, after I came to the house of Shemaiah, the son of Deliah, the son of Mattavah, who was a secret informer, he said, let us meet together in the house of God within the temple. Let us close the doors of the temple, for they're coming to kill you, Nehemiah. Indeed, at night they'll come to kill you. Who is this guy? He wants to get Nehemiah in the temple to save his life from a proposed assassination. Nehemiah says in verse 11, should such a man as I flee? And who is there such as I who would go into the temple to save his life? I will not go in it. Listen to verse 12, chapter 6. Then I perceived that God had not sent him at all, but he had pronounced his prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. And for this reason he was hired, that I should be afraid and act in the way in sin, that they might have cause for an evil report, that they might reproach me. Nehemiah had discernment. We're going to learn how to elevate the discernment in our lives. Ray Wilbur used to say that when he presented a proposal to his faculty at Leland Stanford University, and when it received unanimous consent, he knew that it was 10 years too late. He said, any original, significant, or expensive proposal will generate debate, if not opposition. And so there are many distractions, and we must work through every one of them. Have you ever heard of the cowbird? I didn't think so. It's unique to North America. And while some other birds will occasionally lay their eggs in other bird nests, the cowbird does this exclusively. In Illinois, for example, this little brown cowbird with its mink-colored head is a common sight. But the bird experts say that you will not find one cowbird nest in all of Illinois. Peter Kendall, the writer, says that a cowbird female will commonly deposit 20 to 40 eggs in dozens of nests that are not her own. And cowbird eggs usually hatch more quickly than other bird eggs, and the chicks grow more quickly. And because birds tend to feed the largest and the loudest chicks in their nest, and because they usually they'll become the healthiest and have the best chance for survival, the host birds spend inordinate time and energy tending to the cowbirds instead of their own chicks. Welcome to the world of distractions. You say, I'm going to be a great business leader. Third quarter is going to go up, period. Let me tell you how you're going to know that. You're going to have 99 distractions the minute you get to your office. And as a leader, if you don't know how to navigate those distractions, you are not going to move the ball down the field where you need to move them. So the cowbird is pushing for other songbirds to have extinction now. Seventh, we go to the end zone. Nehemiah reminds us that a true leader always leaves a legacy. We see that in chapter 8, verse 9. Nehemiah, who was governor, Ezra the priest, the scribe, the Levites, who taught the people, said to all the people, this day is holy to the Lord your God, don't mourn or weep. The significance of that is when they were digging the grave for Nehemiah and they were lowering his coffin in the ground, there's just a whole bunch of people that said, because of that man, I'm a different man. Because of that man, I instituted spiritual disciplines in my life that I had never had before. Leaders leave legacies. The greatest legacy you can leave is the lives of people that are being changed by your example. What a high calling for all of us. So Gardner says the prime function of a leader is to keep hope alive. 8, Nehemiah shows us a leader is a catalyst. Some people make things happen. Some people watch things happen. Some people are left wondering what happened. 9:38, and because of this, we make a sure covenant. We write it. Our leaders, our Levites, and our priests seal it. Trait 9, Nehemiah shows us how a leader always challenges the people. He leads the entire people of God in an exercise, puts it in writing like that. And then he says, guess what? 10 verse 1, now these who place their seal on the document were, and there's a whole list of names. This is fascinating. Who's the first name on the document? Say it with me, Nehemiah. When you lead by example, you'll be amazed how many people will follow. The 10th trait, Nehemiah shows us how a leader is always pursuing innovation. Don't have the time to talk about it now. Walls up. Guess what? We've got to station these people in here. They've got to interface harmoniously. We've got 12 tribes of Israel. We got all kinds of baggage from the past of you did this and you did that, and that's why we were in Babylon. And we have one leader on the scene that's got to get these people to work together. And guess who does it? And he does it strategically. 11:1. Now the leaders of the people that dwelled at Jerusalem, the rest of the people cast lots to bring out one of the 10 to dwell in Jerusalem, the holy city. 9/10 were left to dwell in other cities, and the rest of the chapter tells you how he got the people to get along. Wow. And then number 11, Nehemiah epitomizes the fact that a leader is always a model. We wrap up the book with a beautiful prayer in 13:30. Thus I cleanse them of everything pagan. Is that stunning or what? Nehemiah, you got all those people to change their decadent lifestyle? Yeah, and I also assign duties to the priest and the Levites, each to his service. He was a model. I want to be like my dad. How about you, young man? Do you know of anything better you could say? Hey, let me ask you, why don't you take a journey with me? Let's learn how to be hardcore leaders. And someday everybody's going to be clapping. It'll be fun. And other days the problems are going to come. And guess what? It's going to be just as fun. Because on those days, we're going to see how faithful God is. I close with this. Mr. Larson, in his book Wind and Fire, points out 3 interesting facts about sandhill cranes. Those large birds that literally fly great distances across entire continents. They have just 3 remarkable qualities. First, they rotate leadership. No one bird can stay out in the front all the time. And then secondly, they choose leaders who can handle turbulence. And thirdly, all during the time when one bird is leading, the rest of the birds are honking their affirmation as they fly along. A great leadership lesson from the sandhill cranes. Stand with me, please. Father, thank you so much for what we are about to learn. And all of us are excited. Because we know, dear Lord, that you have a great love to lead us to fulfillment, to overcome adversity so we could reach our potential. Thank you for that. Open our minds and hearts so we might receive your truth. Eliminate any guilt of failures of the past, because we know you're a God who forgives. We thank you for that. Before I finish this prayer, are you here today watching by television, video streaming, listening by radio? You've not received Jesus Christ as your Savior? You can today. Pray this prayer with me. Dear God, thank you that you sent Jesus to die on the cross for me. And right now, by faith, I receive Christ as my Savior. Forgive me of my sins. I'm believing on Jesus right now.